This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, and today I'm going to talk about, do we need war or not? War should be avoided at all costs. I think most of us would agree with this affirmation. But as we all know, sometimes war is unavoidable, and not we cannot say that the ones that start a war are the ones responsible for the war, as not everybody agrees with it, but I'm on the side of people that the Russia started the war. Russia invaded Ukraine, but Russia is not responsible for this war. What I mean by that Russia was provoked. Russia was put in a situation that sooner or later the war would come, because it was not a perceived risk, it was a real risk. What the NATO countries, what the Americans were doing was a risk to the integrity of Russia. This is not about Ukraine. This war is happening in a territory, in a country called Ukraine. But this war is not about Ukraine, because you can see it in Georgia, you can see it in other countries. It is the same problem with China. China is being provoked. Taiwan is being used. And then if the war erupts, if there is the boiling point, that China has no other solution but to do something before it's too late, and China is going to be blamed, it's going to be called this and that and so forth and so on. But if we do not have the context, the historical context, and how the situation progress, how the deterioration of in geopolitical terms deteriorates, then we buy into the idea that these wars were unprovoked, and then we just buy into the demonization, dehumanizing, and the demonizing propaganda, and then we just go into the loop, and that's it. Now we are led by people in Brussels, like Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas. For some reason, I mean, I actually, there might be legitimate reasons for them to hate Russia. That's not the point. The point is somebody that has public responsibilities, political responsibilities, geopolitical responsibilities, and foreign affairs responsibilities cannot use their trauma, their personal traumas, or their feelings, their hatred, as a feature, as what drives their political views, because then it is a disaster. But beyond that, who are the people and the interests behind these two people and more people that are they are not elected, they have not been elected, they have been selected for their positions, okay? But that doesn't matter, because as most of us have already realized, being elected is meaningless these days, for at least in the center right and center left, because these people are managers. They are not there to defend the public interest or the best for the country. They are there to defend special interests. They are there, they are just managers. Before we make a choice, before we take a position, a political position, we need to understand if we have been manipulated or not. If we do understand what is at stake and why eventually, if you hate Russians for no reason, but because the rhetoric used has influenced you to the point that you think the Russians are the only ones responsible for this war, you should think. I mean, you should look up if what you assume as accurate information, factual information, actually it is or it is not. Because if eventually it is not, it's leading you, by manipulating you psychologically and emotionally, into support policies that might become a disaster for all of us. And there are very few people in charge of the destiny of 450 million people. This is not something that we can take lightly. It is easy to have our opinions and about this huge problem while we are still enjoying our cozy lives, middle class lives, while everything, in spite of the prices, might be higher, okay, but nevertheless most of us still live comfortably, and we don't have to skip any meal. We can send our children to school. I mean, we can enjoy life, and that is a problem. This can just go sour any minute, but we don't see it like that, because we see the war as something that is far away. It's not exactly. That's why we perceive the war as something that can come in the future, not a measurable future. So it's like a disease, you know. We all know that we can get a disease, but we don't think that we are going to get it tomorrow or this afternoon. That's why we care about disease, but we are not obsessed. I mean, some people are, but we don't need to be obsessed with it. And the war is more or less the same. But while we are making ends meet, you know, while we are going with our lives, working and whatever we do with our daily lives, there are people, in this case unelected people, people in the so-called business community, in finance, in banking, all people that that we do not have any political control of them. Okay, we do not have. They have not been democratically elected. They are not accountable to us, and they are the ones that decide our futures. Some of them we don't even know their names because they don't show up in the media. But they are the ones that really pull the strings of power. And that is important to understand, that we need the European Union we have has morphed. I mean, it has been since the beginning, but it has morphed into something that is very dangerous and unaccountable. And we need to take it seriously, because these people are, people do not remember anymore that was an act of war, a sabotage, the Nord Stream blast. Who talks about it? Nobody did. We are not allowed to know who did it. As if it was a matter of, no importance, just a little thing. No, it was not a little thing. It was a huge negative consequences for Germany, for example, and for the economy. It doesn't matter, because the agenda, these people are following an agenda that is difficult to understand, because it seems to be a self-defeating agenda, and because it's a bigger game that is led by these imperialistic ideas of controlling the old world, being an hegemonic power. That was the American policy, the neocon policy for a long time, that no other country should, or group of countries or organization or anything in the world should be allowed to become an adversary, able to challenge the Pax Americana. That was the American policy, the deep state American policy, or the deep politics, if you prefer, and the policy of the permanent bureaucracy. So this is the reality. This is why they are now trying to save the European economy by militarizing it. So we need to invest in the military, because we need it in order to go to war with Russia. And many of us might believe this is the way to go, because as they paint Russia is supposed to be the geopolitical intentions of the Russian people, of the Russian leaders, is to control the European, to control the Eurasia, to control from Vladivostok to Lisbon. That has never been part of the plan. The plan was to have peace from Lisbon to Vladivostok, or now should be peace from Lisbon to Beijing. We could become, the problem is that there are other interests, and the financial, and that is a point that many people do not understand. This is not about politics. War is politics by other means, that's true. Okay? But there is no politics without economics. There is no war without power. The idea that wealth is the tool for power. That's why they need to control the resources. That's why they need to control the peoples. They need to control everything. The Americans, or the Anglo-American Empire, the people behind this project, they had the plan to control in permanence, in perpetuity, the world this is not a conspiracy theory. This is the reality. There are many conspiracy theories about this and that, and that doesn't mean that there are not secret groups, and they exist. But this is people behind all these organizations, even secret fraternities, and all they are the think tanks. They are the CFR, and I mean there are so many organizations. All of them, behind them, there is people with power, wealthy people with power. It doesn't matter if there are not new people coming into playing, having a role, like the new tech oligarchs. They are playing a role too. But there is also old money, old families, and they are not all. They do not have all the same ideas, but they share a lot. They have a lot in common. They share a lot. What they have in common is they understand that to perpetuate their power, they need to control everything. That's no other. That's why they cannot allow any other country to rise, to become a challenge. That's why China and Russia and any other country of minor importance, like Iran or North Korea or any other, or even any other country that wants to have a different approach, a different economy, and a different political system, they are not allowed to do it. They need to be under the control of the dollar. This war is a war that has been the roots of this war is not to defend democracy. It's nothing to do with Ukraine has been invaded and they have the right to defend themselves. That's all right. Nobody disagrees with that. Nobody disagrees that any country in this world has the right to defend itself. But this is not about that. That's the main point. This is not about Ukraine having the right to defend itself. That's why. That's why there was in 2014 the Maidan coup. Those things don't happen by chance. We all can. There is again another woman that also that has a deep hatred for Russians. Victoria Nuland. And she had a very important role in working for NED, National Endowment for Democracy, in preparing the coup that brought into power, that allowed the neo-Nazi groups, like the Azov Battalion and other groups, to become to to be normalized, to become part of, to prepare to exactly to arm what they did the last 10 years, the last decade, was to prepare Ukraine for war. So the war was it was part of a plan. Not because probably Ukraine was killing. I mean, the neo-Nazis were killing people from the Russian-speaking people of Lugansk and Donetsk were being killed by the neo-Nazis. Okay, and they were financed and armed and trained by the Western powers, by the Americans, with the help of the CIA, with the help of other organizations. That's why they use the non-profitable industrial complex, which means there are many organizations, NGOs and other organizations, and many other organizations that with private funds and government funds, that they truly have they play a role in the geopolitical role as part of the American foreign policy. So that's why we need historical context, political and economic context. We need to understand who is behind the scenes, pulling the strings. You know, who are the ones, cui bono? Who does want the war? Because the von der Leyen and Kaya Kallas, they are just the ones that are supposed to be the faces of the political faces of the power structure. They do not have they do not have the power to decide by themselves. That's the point. But they play an important role, nevertheless. It's not because they do not have. Their role is not important, because actually it is important. And we need politicians not saviors, okay? Not saviors or individual heroes, you know, like that. We have this idea of people that individually they take they come to save us, you know, superheroes ideology. No, we need politicians that do not align. They are not managers for the wealthy, for the oligarchs and plutocrats in the deep state, but they have political and moral integrity to tell the truth, but as an organized group, supported by us, by grassroots organizations. They can be independent. There does not even the need for a political party, which I believe it's important to have political parties. But we can have it in many other forms as long as we are organized and united. Because the problem is unity and organization. That is what we lack. We should not expect saviors and heroes. Because, you have many cases, like in America. Martin Luther King, the Kennedy's brothers. They stood against the deep state, or in the deep bureaucracy, and they ended up, because they become too influential. One because it president of the United States, and the other one because it became very influential, and others as well. They can kill them, because the idea, as you can see now, that is done with the Iranians. They try to kill the people that are responsible for the heads, the leaders, and they just by doing that they try to destroy the country, to destroy the leadership. And that's why the leadership that's why this mentality that we have, that we are always expecting somebody to take the role, to lead us, somebody to be courageous enough, hero figure, a savior figure that is going to save us, is going to destroy the evil and restore the peace and order and the good values, liberty, democracy, and everything else. That's not how we should. It doesn't matter if it's communist China or capitalist West or whatever it is, whatever kind of system. We should never. We need to change the way we frame these political structures, these ideological ways of organizing society, politics, economics, and culture, because we do need to have political agency, real power, to be part of the decisions, to be part of the process of keeping people and institutions accountable. Not only people, it has to be institutions. It doesn't matter. It's not only a matter of law, because law, as we all should know by now, is crafted by the same people, because they are all managers for oligarchs and plutocrats. This is not about bad. This is not about evil government. This is about a government and the state that is controlled by oligarchs and plutocrats, instead of being controlled by the people. That is the problem. That's the problem. And that's why we need to understand, if we need a war against China, against Russia, if we need to prepare for war against Russia, and probably also against China, together with the United States of America and Canada and Australia and Japan and South Korea or Philippines and whoever, or we need to think in a more comprehensive way and try to understand what's really at stake before it's too late. Because before we just escalate until we just, it knocks on our door. No? Till we don't stand up for anything, we don't organize and unite for anything, because we don't want to bother with it. We just want to have our comfortable lives, commodified lives, convenient lives, you know, and then it's too late. It's not because I'm against or for. I mean, should be open to debate if the Europeans need a common military, no? If we should invest on building, how does it work? How is it? Is it controlled by Brussels, by people like von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas? Who is going to control it? Don't you understand that the EU Commission and NATO are Siamese twins? That there is no coincidences? I mean, this is not because, you know, they use demagoguery and a lot of propaganda and myths and fallacies and all to manipulate us emotionally and intellectually and psychologically. We are being played every single day, 24/7. And we start to believe, because repetition has the ability to make us believe that, to make lies not become truth, but be perceived as truths. Never think that a lie becomes a truth. Lies don't become truth. Lies can be used in ways that we perceive them as truths. That's the trick. A lie doesn't become a truth. It is perceived as a truth, which is there is a lot of difference in that. And they make us feel as okay, we need to prepare for war. We need to defend ourselves. Okay, we have the right to defend ourselves. You know, that's the main idea. If we do not have, if the Americans leave us, okay, no, the Americans that has bases in many countries, especially in they try to justify the militarization of our economies with the need to prepare for war with Russia. And of course, many of us believe and perceive Russia as a threat. And it's not because it is not, we cannot have is an hypothesis. It is always possible that Russia or some Russian leader or government, not necessarily Putin, because I truly believe that Putin is not stupid enough to do that, because it would be a stupid idea. It would be a dumbest idea for the Russians to conquer Europe, that would not lead anywhere but destruction of Russia and the destruction of Europe. That's why we as Europeans should think the same way. It is dumb to believe that we can destroy Russia, that we can defeat Russia. We don't need a war with Russia, and we should not wish or want it. Doesn't make any sense. It is based on lies, on fabricated arguments, on bad data that is used to manipulate our perception. The perception we have about the war itself, the Russians, the Russian plans, the Russian elites. It's not because, do I like Putin or not? It doesn't matter. It's my private feelings. It's my private views of him. I mean, I certainly do not agree with many views he has about economics and many other things. But I think if we paint him as Hitler, or is the personification of evil, I mean, it doesn't solve anything. We need negotiations, and I believe that we could arrange an European, Russian, EU, Russia security arrangement that would be good for all of us. It doesn't matter that we don't have our own means of protection, that we should not, but it should be made in a way that it needs to be done. This is not a choice, or we might end up destroying ourselves. And there might be the point of no return, and we should not escalate to that point. It is not possible to win. There is no winners. There will be no winners if we push for a direct war with Russia. There will be no winners. There will be only destruction. The destruction that we do not see right now, because we believe that this is somewhere in the future. But we need to think that we need to be precautious. We need to have the right policies right now. We cannot allow them, get away with everything. That's the point. We are powerless because, in my opinion, it's because we have the wrong politicians. We are betting in the wrong politicians. We are trapped in the moderate mindset. We think we should not vote or have radical ideas, political ideas, economic ideas, and even cultural ideas. We are trapped for decades of propaganda, capitalist propaganda. This is the neoliberal free market propaganda became dominant, that our minds have been hijacked, and we do not see it like that, of course, because we think we make our choices, political choices, like any other choice, and ideological choices, as part of our free thinking. You know, we are free thinkers. No, we are not. In order to be a free thinker, we need to have an analyzed life, which means that you need to be conscious, to have a conscious process of analyzing yourself, your convictions, your beliefs, to compare it with other things. And this is an exercise. This requires training. This is not something that you should take for granted as part of your identity, because it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. We are how we perceive the world is connected, and our decisions, what we think is our values and everything else, is conditioned and determined by the dominant narratives. You know, by the version of the dominant narratives that we have, that is running inside in our subconscious mind. And if you believe that everything you believe and you take as granted, that is one of our major flaws, is to believe that we have innate critical judgment, that we can perceive, that we have this innate ability to separate I think it's called shaft from the wheat, you know, to separate the good from the bad. But we don't, because we operate with intellectual tools, you know, with ideas and principles, and they have a pattern, and we identify patterns, not because they have to be true. We operate with these intellectual tools that some are accurate, so some they are pretty useful to help us to understand the reality as it is, but others are not. And that is true for all of us. That's why it is so easy that we have misinformed and inaccurate understanding of reality. In this case, I'm talking about the reality of war, the perception we have about Russia and the Russia threat, and the need to prepare for war with Russia. We should not take our views that we understand, because where did we learn it? We have to learn whatever we know. It comes from somewhere. It's not only our ability to deduce, to come up with them. No, I say, and I like to repeat it again and again, we all are bits and pieces of other people's knowledge and experience. Okay? We are not as original as we believe we are. Our ideas are not as original as we believe. What is original? What is origin is the way we put things together. That is original because it has to do with the combination of our personality, with our temperament, our life experience, and all the factors that makes our individuality. That's why it seems that we have our original opinions, but those opinions they usually do not come. They are not as original as we imagine. They are part of this process that occurs in our subjective minds with the help of our conscious processes, but it is always with material, okay, it is not ours. It came from our social environment, of influences that some we do not even are aware of it, because we are always processing information, and most of the information that we are processing does not require the interventions of our conscious mind. So that's why we process lots of information, and that is important to us to identify patterns and to understand reality. So it's part of us, it's part of our environment, of our individuality, of our identity, but it has nothing to do with our free choice. It was not decided by us that we would be different people if we would live in a different epoch or in a different country. Okay, now there is many similarities in many parts of the world because we have a global civilization, and information and experiences and many things travel at the speed of light. So we are kind of some sort of global citizens. But before, people would have very different experiences and understanding of life, and very different cultures, different languages, very different languages, as they still exist today, very different languages, and perceptions of the world that because we are born and raised in very different cultures. That's as simple as that. Not because there is nothing to do with choice. It has to do with an acquired identity that is based on other people's knowledge and experience that is shared with us or imposed on us, even coercively, through using coercion. Because education is indoctrination and instrumentalization. And all our lives, we will many things that we believe that they are they have been achieved through a process of free choice, they are not. It doesn't mean that we do not have free choice. Yes, we have free choice and freedom. In relative terms, we do have it. That's why we are able to have critical analysis. But we need to compare. We need to have this is only able if we train ourselves to do it. That's what I tried to say. It doesn't happen because it's an innate feature. It is at a certain extent an innate feature that requires training in order to be helpful. Otherwise, we just lose it. We just think we use it, but we don't. We don't use it at all. By the way, we allow others, by becoming followers, okay, that's what most of us as spectators, consumers, followers. What we do is we allow others, people, individuals, organizations, to replace ourselves, to tell us who we are, okay? To tell us what we need to do in order to be happy and to have a meaningful life. What kind of war is good and what kind of war is bad. And they try to convince us that it is our choice, that we do it, that we choose ourselves. But most of the time we don't. We are fulfilling, we are manipulated for sure, but we are by using fear, for example. They exploit fear, but at the same time they exploit fear. They do make us feel we live as learned helplessness, that's nothing we can do but trust them, because ourselves we don't have the power to change anything. It doesn't matter that if you go and see what is learned helplessness, you might think that it doesn't work with you, but it works with all of us. The only way that we can, to a certain extent, get over it is by understanding how it works and by training ourselves to avoid it, to recognize it. That's the only way, and that is a conscious process that requires training, as any other thing in life. That in order to develop a skill, it requires training. And somehow we believe that we are critical thinkers and we have a deep analysis and we understand reality because it is part of our it is a natural feature. It is an innate feature. It is not. It goes through culture. And culture is manipulation. Culture is domestication. And this is true for everything in our lives. For every aspect of our lives. And when it comes to war and peace issues, it's even more important, because war is one of the most is an horrible. Usually you have working class people, peasants, peons, useful idiots, cannon fodder, used by powerful people that they tell you that it's your patriotic duty to do it, and many times the wars are just banksters' wars and imperialistic wars, which is the same. An imperialist war it's always a banksters' war. It is always a plutocratic and oligarchic war. And that's why we need to understand what's going on. Cui bono? Should we trust? Should we take these people that are selling the war, that are training us, that are colonizing our minds with the dehumanized and view of the Russians? That's not the way to explain in a rational way why we need to go to war. If I want to that you help me in a conflict with my neighbor, for example, and I start to dehumanize him and demonize him, you might think, this might not be like that. It doesn't mean that you are not right, you don't have the reason on your side. It's because why do you need to demonize your adversary or your enemy instead of explaining and giving the background and the context, the true background and context for why you need to help me with facts? And if I want your support, I need to provide facts, not propaganda, not by instilling fear. You know, that's what we are subjected now. And that's why we need to understand that those who are telling us for 3.5 years that Russia invaded Ukraine without being provoked, we should be smarter than that, and we do need to understand, do our homework. We always need to do our homework, and in the case of war, we need to double check. We need to see through. We cannot use the lenses that somebody just eventually a media pundit or an expert or whoever it is that tells us how we should perceive it. And you need to understand, why do you trust that person? Do you trust that person because this person has been part of your life for a long time? You invite that person to your living room every day or every night, and you just got used to it, and it's kind of a friend or a family member that is allowed to be in your living room every day? Do you really think that all people, millions, hundreds of thousands of people, or even millions of people, that every night watch that person, listen to the words that person, and they should trust him because they got used to him. They don't see him, they see that person as trustworthy. But why is he trustworthy? Where did you find, why do you are convinced it is trustworthy? Do you really check it up? Do you really compare? Do you understand that these people, most of these people, are info entertainers? They sell info entertainment. They are not in the business of informing you. They are in the business of entertaining you and sell products and goods and devices and services. That's what they are. That's why they suck, and many people cannot stand them anymore, because many people start to understand that they do not care about the truth. They don't get six figures salaries because they are good professionals. No, it's because they are good entertainers. And facts do not matter. Because, I have a quote in my blog that was, I'm sorry, but I don't remember the name from a book that goes more or less like that. I'm going to paraphrase. The media might not be able to brainwash you, but they are astonishing accomplished in to tell us what to think about. That's called framing. What news is about is giving us frames through which we should perceive reality. Political, economic, geopolitical. And that's why it is very important to us to do not allow ourselves, because the problem is, if you every day listen to it, then it becomes a dominant narrative in your subconscious mind. So it becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of how you perceive the world. That's how the psycho-social and cultural identity is built inside us. And what is going to be used to identify patterns. And that's going to affect our behavior and our choices that we believe are free. No, there is no choices without influences. In our besides that, there always choices have on the emotional part. There are wishes and whims and desires involved in choices. As social emotions and basic emotions, and many other components of our experience of idiosyncratic features. And this matters in every for everything in life, and of course it matters for war. That's why we need to understand in a deep and comprehensive way why do we need this war. Do you really feel that, do we wish it and want it? Is it going to bring do you think the outcome is going to be better than to engage in negotiations and then to find an arrangement and just get rid of the Americans in Europe? Why should we have American bases in our countries? In some countries at least, that they are occupied since the Second World War. Why is that? Why do we want to be a second tier, a junior partner at best, and vassal states of the United States? Why don't we have a good, why can't we have a cooperative relation with Russia? That is the future. It's not because we cannot have relations with the Americans, but we could play. I mean the Europeans. We could and should play a role in ending the unipolar moment with the unipolar world order, and build a multipolar order, because we could and should play this role in helping transitioning the humanity and civilization from the imperialist civilization to a ecological, holistic civilization that we really need it for our survival. And we are being held hostages by the people, by the imperialist minds, by the people, by the wrong people, by people that are insane. They only care about wealth accumulation and private property rights, primacy. They don't care about anything else. Everything is power and control. And that's why they do not care. They are damaging our lives, they are damaging our future, they are putting our future into jeopardy because they will not give up their privileges and control without a fight. That's why we need organized power. We need organized. We, the people, need to be organized, united and organized, to define what the politics for the future of our continent and the world should be. We need to discuss it with the Russians, with the Chinese, with the African people, with all people, with the Americans. That the Americans too should play a role because what the American elites are doing, the deep state and they are not, the war is not against China. This war is against the Americans. Because in the end, it will be the American people the losers if there will be a war against China. And for those who believe that these wars can be won, they could not be, they are just under the spell of the propaganda, the same the delusional abolish that the American culture, the superiority of the American dream, the American culture, that is rubbish. Everybody knows it. But it doesn't matter, because it's not about being a fact. It's about being a myth, a fiction that people take as a fact. And that's why it is effective. That's why myths and fictions are effective, because they can be taken as facts. They can be perceived as facts. And we don't go anywhere like that. And instead of perceiving ourselves as political agents of change, no, we perceive ourselves, we think we have to fight Russia, to defeat Russia. Russia bad. Yes. That is exactly like that. That's how the reality works. That's how the rulers, the people that have been ruling the world, dictating the marching orders, dictating the global policies, controlling the economy and the global finance. That's how that we have been for 5 or 6 centuries almost. We have been playing by moral rules and being fair and honest. That's how we should define ourselves. We have to understand that those who want war, who are propagandizing us against Russia, that want to prepare us for war with Russia, they do not have our best interest at heart. They don't care about our lives. They will use us. It's the same. That's what's happening in Ukraine. They are responsible, of course. I understand that they have the right to defend themselves. So that's the need to sacrifice lives. That is true. I understand that principle. But it's not that principle. It is about, they don't care about the lives of the Ukrainians, that they are sacrificing them, and they are going to ruin that country. And then they are going to collect and to plunder what's going to be left of it. That's what the American so-called investors want. The venture capitalists, the vulture funds, the private equity firms, the private management, investment firms. They are all what they want. They don't care about the lives of the Ukrainians. This is not about Ukraine. This is just an attempt to weaken and destroy Russia. But it's not going to work. Even if we go to a direct confrontation with Russia, that will be the end of us. That might also be the end of Russia, or eventually the end of the world as we know it. But that will be the end of us. If you believe that we can win a war against Russia, you could not be more delusional than that. We can never be 100% sure about something that has not happened yet. But this is the kind of scenery that most probably that's very difficult. That is a very little possibility that we could win a war against Russia that would most likely end up in a nuclear exchange. And that, by the way, if that would happen, the Russians and the Chinese, they would have, I think if that would happen, that would most probably deflagrate a world, because the weapons, the Americans, and they have weapons, nuclear weapons all over the world, in submarines, in military bases, and so how would that work then for us? So I think it's better that we do whatever we can do in order to stop the madness. These people cannot be the ones, the von der Leyens, the Kaya Kallas, and many others in Brussels, in Strasbourg, in Frankfurt, and in every capital. We cannot allow our national leaders and these non-elected people in Brussels, in NATO headquarters, and Washington, in NATO headquarters in Brussels for sure, the European Commission, the European Council. We cannot allow these people to prepare for war with Russia in our behalf without consulting us. They do not have the legitimacy. War is not an issue or free choice, okay? War is an issue of moral responsibility. Is an issue that requires reflection, requires analysis. It cannot be taken lightly. And we don't need to prepare for a war when we don't need to believe that we need to prepare for war in order to have peace. We need to prepare for peace through negotiations. That's what we need. And this is not a dream. If we want to be honest, if we really have a plan for peace, the Russians will sit with us and discuss it. They don't want this war forever. It is us that want this war. We are the ones, our leaders are the ones that want to prolong this war until they find that they don't care about how many Ukrainian lives they will lose, that will be lost forever, and how many families are going to be destroyed. They don't care about that. They just want to see if they can prolong the war until if they have a solution, some sort of solution for the problem. It can be by eventually even killing Putin. They will try all every possible way to find to opposition groups in Russia, to even terrorists. They will. I mean, they will try to do it in many ways. So that's why they want to prolong the war, if to see if they can find a way that is advantageous for the Western powers. That's why they want to prolong the war. It's nothing to do with the right of the Ukrainians to defend themselves, because they could not care less about that. They just want Ukraine. They want Ukraine. They want the territories. They want to control the resources. Of course, they care about it, but only in one sense. It's about controlling the resources, the land, the minerals that are in Ukrainian territory. That's why they don't want to lose the territory for Russia. But Russia only wants it to the Dnieper River. Russia doesn't want to go beyond that unless it is absolutely necessary. So, be careful what you wish for, because it might become true. It might become a fulfillment, and then it will not be only for you. It will be for all of us. That's why the ones that choose war, the ones that are picking the side of war, they need to understand that they might think that we need to defend ourselves against Russia because Russia is going to invade us and destroy everything. That is just a myth, because it is obvious. Then don't you see that the mad people, don't you see by the way they speak, every single one of them, from Norway to Portugal, there are very few exceptions. Most of them speak, we can see they are mad. We can see they are lunatics. Why should we believe them? Just compare them. When you and then compare them with Lavrov or Putin or Zakharova. Is she called Zakharova? Okay, you know what I mean. And the Chinese is the same. I mean, it is an. I mean, to have Trump as a president of the United States, it is an indignity for the United States of America. Yes, that's what I really believe. This is the kind of person that should never be a president. I mean, am I saying that it should be Kamala Harris, Biden? Oh, no, of course not. That's the problem. They are selected. The ones, I mean, even we need really independent voices, not people that surrender, but not heroes. It's people that need to come from the grassroots levels, that to support of organize. Not like Bernie Sanders. It is a shame that people don't understand it. He caved all the way, He speaks the language of a reformist, someone that wants to reform the system, but it belongs to a party. But it belongs to a party that doesn't allow it. That's why he could not become the candidate. It is obvious, should be obvious for everyone that it's not reality doesn't work like that. The system is rigged to a way that is only the selected and people believe that Trump is not selected, is not part of the system. Of course he's part of the system. How can you believe that Trump is some sort of a dissident? Dissident of what? It's a maverick. No, he's just I mean, he doesn't know. He knows what he wants. He wants more for him. That I'm sure that he knows it. He wants more for him. And being president, it might help him to gain more for him. Not for the United States. He's an ignorant person in many subjects. There are many of us that know much more about politics and geopolitics than he does. But it doesn't matter. It just matters the perception. And many people just perceive him as being one of them, making America great again. What does that even mean? We don't need to make America great again. We need to make America a normal country, as all countries need to be. We are all equals. And those who want war do not want it like that. That's why we never should buy into the propaganda of the ones that want war. They are lying to us with the purpose of using us as useful idiots, cannon fodder, and disposable peons. And I'm going to end here with hoping that you engage in a deeper reflection about the need to go to prepare for war with Russia. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.